maybe just tell them to do that. Bring more. Thank you. I just thought. Yeah. Since I was sitting over here. Would anyone like to lead in prayer this evening? I was asking if there was a volunteer to lead the prayer this evening. Would you do that? Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, it is 6 p.m. and time to begin our City Commission meeting. I wanted to welcome all of you who are here, friends, family, and news media. Thank the police department for being here also, and city staff. At this time, Commissioner Ashbrook will lead us in our invocation. If you would please stand.
Patient and loving Heavenly Father, we thank you that we're allowed to come together in a democratic process and live in a republic such as our country and do things for our citizens that we hope would not just benefit them but glorify you. We pray for those who stand in the gap for us each and every day, whether it be first responders or those who are in faraway places who defend our country. We thank you again for your grace and your mercy, undeserved as it might be, but thank you again and ask that you would grant us the discernment we need tonight to conduct the business for those who have entrusted us with the operations and the daily goings-on of the city of Lynn Haven. For it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you'd please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I would begin the mayor's report by reading a proclamation as a day of celebration and honor today of the 26th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we do have a representative with us today to accept this. And the proclamation reads, whereas on the 26th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, we recognize the act which has helped tear down barriers for millions of people living with disabilities. On the anniversary of important legislation, our nation underscores our commitment to ensuring that all individuals have an equal opportunity to realize their full potential. And since July 26, 1990, this historic legislation has provided a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. The ADA reflects our nation's faith in the promise of all individuals and helps to ensure that our nation's opportunities are more accessible to all. And when President George H.W. Bush signed this groundbreaking act into law, it better enabled citizens with disabilities to participate fully in all aspects of life. Over the course of 2 decades, this act has made our schools and workplaces more welcoming, helped change attitudes that once seemed unchangeable, and expanded the opportunity for many exceptional Americans. And whereas the ADA is one of the most successful civil rights laws in our history and has been an essential part of countless American lives, now therefore be it resolved that I, Margot Deal Anderson, as mayor of the city of Lynn Haven, do hereby proclaim today, July the 26th, 2016, as a day of celebration in honor of the 26th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act in the city of Lynn Haven, and celebrate the progress that has been made toward full participation of people with disabilities in our community and our society. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Lynn Haven to be affixed this 26th day of July, 2016, and will be signing this and presenting it to Ms. Pam Darworth, who's here with us today. And I just wanted to recognize Mrs. Darworth. She does work nationally and lobbies frequently in Washington, D.C. She's been in the company of great people in Washington, D.C. and in other places to make sure that all who have disabilities are treated fairly. And most recently, she's been working with our city staff, notably Maria Stout-Tate and others with Leisure Services, advising and giving information on how we can make our parks more accessible in Lynn Haven as we begin to put in new playground equipment and the new design. And I believe Ben Yankee's been working with that as well. So thank you, Mrs. Darworth, for being here. Would you like to say anything, or you're welcome to if you would? And I neglected to point out as well when I said that Mrs. Darworth had worked with presidents and governors that she didn't do that as she was appointed. It was a great honor that she is a presidential appointee. And if you couldn't hear all that she was just saying, she was saying that accessibility is not enough. They should have opportunities to be a part of what's going on. And so with these new interactive ADA playground equipments that we'll be looking at for the city and bringing in as the grant money becomes available, that's going to allow these children to not only sit and watch others play, but they're going to be able to play as well. So if we could give a round of applause for Mrs. Darworth. Will you be able to stay for the meeting, or would you prefer that we sign it now so that you may leave? Sign it now? Okay. I think we're going to take a photo of us right here. Let me turn this. Got my arm? Okay. You've been down. Okay. You're very welcome. Thank you. To continue with the mayor's report, I just wanted to add of course, we did not have a meeting on July the 14th because there was only one item on the agenda, and two of our commissioners were unable to attend as well. Since that meeting, I had the honor and I was excited to attend a tabletop meeting with area disaster representatives, as well as representatives from our fire department and police department, the city manager, and other city staff to discuss several plans for the city in the event of a disaster. And as much as we don't like to talk about those, we know that they eventually do come, whether in the form of weather or something else. So it's good to know that our city's working towards being prepared. I also had the opportunity to attend with our city manager, and I was able to speak at the county commission meeting, and I wanted to just speak to that for a moment as we're talking about budget and millage and everything. The county commission has placed on the November ballot for referendum vote in November a half-cent sales tax, and it's something that I am much in favor of, and I will be talking about it quite a bit because I think it could be a windfall for us here in Lynn Haven. And this sales tax would be countywide if we were to vote for it as residents. And we are the second largest city, and the proceeds are allotted by the population of the city. So we would receive, in that category. It would bring about $1.7 million per year to Lynn Haven, and it would be earmarked specifically for paving of roads and repairing infrastructure. That's the only thing we could use it for. And over a course of 10 years, that would bring in about $17 million to the city, and the cost would just be for those who are spending money, and not only our residents, but those who pass through our city, our visitors and all, would be helping with those costs as well. So you can send me your thoughts via Facebook, voicemail, or otherwise, and I'm sure your other commissioners would probably, they can speak to that, but they might want to hear what you think about it as well. But I think that would be a wonderful thing for us here in Lynn Haven and all across our county, our entire county, as the rest of the state and nation. We're suffering from infrastructure problems. So that concludes my report, so I will pass over to Commissioner Shad.
About 2 weeks ago, most of the members of the City Commission went through an ethics training course here in this building. The state legislature several years ago passed the requirement that all appointed and elected officials throughout the state take a refresher course in the ethics requirements. So annually, we have an ethics training course. I brought the booklet that we use. It's 51 pages long, if anybody would like to see it and look through it. But that is a state requirement. You don't have to take it at that particular meeting. You can go online and take it. But we had a good turnout of our commission, plus some of our required staff members are required also to be there and to take the thing. So rest assured, we're ethical now. And we intend to stay that way. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Shad. And I'm one of the online participants. I wasn't able to come that day, but I am doing it online. Commissioner Ashbrook.
I too participated with Commissioner Shad in this training course, but I will second the mayor's support of this tax. It's an oxymoron to me to use fair and tax in the same sentence, but as taxes go, of course, that's why we don't have an income tax in the state of Florida, because we have a consumptive sales tax that everybody comes here and buys something or spends some dollars. So as taxes go, yes, we would benefit from it, but and that's one of the great things about it. But a consumptive tax, if there is such a thing as a fair tax, is about as close as you can get to it. So I too would, and I think they're going to have proper guidelines for the use and the oversight. So I think it'll be great for us and Bay County, for that matter, because Bay County will get a sizable chunk and work on the unincorporated roads, but it would sure help us with our paving and infrastructure needs. So yes, I would support that as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnes, did you have a report?
Yes, just want to say thank you to the city staff for the hard work that you all have done for the 4th of July activities. You worked hard. Again, we had a great year. It was hot, but you guys did a good job, and thank you so much for that. And that'd be all.
Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a couple of things. Yesterday we got good news. Mr. Miller's been waiting on for quite some time, and that is finally the transfer of 390, the section 77 to 231 has transferred from the county to the state. What does that mean for Lynn Haven? Hopefully it'll mean that they will be able to do something with the road a lot faster than they would have if it remained at the county. And also there's talk of putting it on the SIS. The TPOs has approved everything, and it's, so anyway, so it's a good day for that transfer to happen. But also, I just wanted to point out a sign that I saw on the way here today, because it's a homemade sign down the road, and he puts out there and reminds people of the speed limit. being 25. And today, that was replaced with a thank you to the Lynn Haven Police Department. So it just reminded me what a great community we live in, how blessed we are to live here, and what a great, police department that we have. And just don't want to overlook that, especially in today's world and times, that let's just always keep them in our thoughts and prayers and for their safety and the hard work that they do. So that's all.
Thank you,
Mayor.
And I also, if I could add on to Commissioner Friend's comments about our police department as well as our other first responders, I'm just going to say this in the mayor's report, and then if someone else on the commission wanted to pick it up later and make a motion, I think that would be wonderful. But I received a letter, and I don't know if the rest of the commission received it or not, asking that Lynn Haven would consider having a special day to recognize law enforcement, fire department, EMT, and our veterans, similar to what some of the other cities do on September the 11th. And I thought that was a fabulous idea, but as part of my reporting and receiving the letter, I'm not sure what time of day that Panama City does theirs and some of the other cities, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be on that day. But I did speak with a couple of our police officers about it, and they thought that day was a good idea as long as it was a different time of day. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out that, possibly I think it would be a great time. Maybe we could use one of our area, local large churches to do it. We might have it outdoors. Maybe we could combine a luncheon or something like that. But I'm just, throwing that out. And then maybe later as new business, someone might feel the need to make a motion. So I'll leave it there. Moving now to the city manager's report, item number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have two things. One, it seems this time of year we have a lot of bear encounters or sightings.
Sorry.
We actually had a large one down by the bridge, if you hadn't heard, and we had another one show up on July 4th. Well, it's not that our police department doesn't want to do anything about it. There's not much they can do. Obviously, they're a protected species, and if you're not on the internet, please call the PD, or we can provide you information of what we can do and what FWC can do. But we put that out on Facebook. We put it out on all of our social media, including our website. But I've also asked, and the police department is coordinating a workshop with FWC, and they're going to come in this room at some future date, and we'll post that as well, and talk to you about how to limit these encounters, what to do, what our PD can do, what they cannot do, and certainly what they can do as well. So anyway, look for that for those of you that are interested. The other item I had is back on the commission meeting July 14th, our last meeting, the commission approved pavement rehab for Mosley Drive and Michigan Avenue. And I'm sorry.
We have one on the 14th. We canceled that one.
Okay. The last commission meeting, I guess it was the 28th. Thank you, Mayor. The commission approved Roberts & Roberts. They were the low bid at $290,465, again, for rehabbing Mosley Drive out there between 77 and Mosley High School and parts of Michigan Avenue. Since then, we met with a contractor to start work, and he discovered that he had bid in error and was actually $46,000 less than what he bid. Now, while we understood what his error was, we still believe we were right in assessing how the contractor or the bid was let, but we could also see how he misunderstood that. Nonetheless, we looked at it, and staff and I sat down with this contractor and negotiated the $46,000 he was requesting more to do both roads down to $35,000, because that's what I have the authority to do as the city manager. And even so, with that, the price would be $325,000, $325,465,000. That is still $43,212 less than the next lowest bid. So they still would have been low bid. They would have been low bid by $43,000, a little more than $43,000. Rather than take this, to a legal challenge, we want to see these roads get done this year before school starts, and we're running out of time. And frankly, I don't think we'll get a better deal next year. So I went ahead and I went ahead and asked them to start work contingent upon commission approval, so I'm here tonight at this meeting asking for the commission's approval to increase the contract $35,000 to get those roads done this year. And again, I don't believe we'll find a better price next year anyway if we were to rebid next year.
Do I have a motion that we would add this as an agenda item to new business? Or can we just do it now?
You can just
do it
approve
now?
his
Okay.
request.
Is there a motion that we would accept the city manager's recommendation?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion from the board before a vote? Are there any questions or discussion about this from the public before we would vote? There appears to be none, so Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the motion is approved. Anything else?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 6 is the city attorney's report.
No report, Madam.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, and if you haven't been to our meetings frequently, the procedure for the consent agenda is I will read each of the items, 7 through 14, ask for a motion for approval and a second, and then I'll ask for discussion or questions from the board or staff reports, and then the public, if there are any of the items that you would like to comment or ask questions about it, then you will have opportunity to do that before a vote is taken. So item number 7, the minutes from our last commission meeting, which was June the 28th, 2016. Item number 8 is to approve a minor subdivision, MS 1607 Steve Waldman, Michigan Avenue. Item 9, approve renewal of contract with Ecological Consultant Group for MPDES permit compliance reporting. Item number 10, approve the CDBG administration contract with Summit Professional Services. Item 11, approve the CDBG application contract with Summit Professional Services. Item number 12, approve the termination agreement for roadside assistance funding. Item number 13, approve the grant agreement with DEP for water system improvements. And item number 14, approve the grant agreement with DEP for reuse improvements. Is there a motion that we accept these items on the consent agenda?
Also move.
Is there a second? Thank you. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion about any of these items from the board?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to raise a question on item 8,
Okay.
that minor subdivision. If I recall, the commission approved some years ago a revision to our land use that when we had people that had 3 lots together like that, that they couldn't do what he is requesting. But why not give the city manager or the planning department the authority just to go ahead and do this? We've approved it once, so they don't have to keep coming back before us with these.
I would defer to the city attorney on that question.
That wouldn't be a problem. It would just require a quick change in our code, because right now the code requires city commission approval for minor subdivisions.
That's actually one of the items I brought up yesterday in the workshop. If there's objective criteria, I think it's a wasted motion to put it in front of the commission if the commission has approved the process.
Right. And city manager, are you working on a list of those things, or is this the only one that really stands out? The things that the commission's already set the...
Yeah, I do have a list. They're minor compared to this. This is the one that shows up on the commission agenda. It's the most frequent, and to my recollection, they've all been 5-0 votes because they've all met objective criteria, and they go through the planning commission as well.
So is that something that you could bring?
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Is that something you could bring to a future meeting then?
Sure.
To change the code, and then we could just handle it that
That was the
way?
plan.
Because I brought that up as well a couple of times.
So do we need a motion to instruct the city manager to work with the attorney and bring that code change to us?
I don't think so, do we?
The commission could delegate the authority down to the planner or city manager, the planning, until the code change is made. That way it wouldn't come back again, and then we'll bring a code change back.
I'll move that we take that. I move that we take that action. Well,
We've already got a motion
we've
on the
already got
table,
a
though.
motion.
Yeah, I think we have to deal with this motion, and then you can come back and add that after we...
Yes, let's continue with item 8 and then come back with a motion for the changes that, or should we?
I think there's been a motion to adopt the consent agenda already.
Yes.
So perhaps a vote on the consent agenda and then come back to number 8 after
Okay.
that.
So was there any other discussion about item number 8 other than what we've had? Okay, any questions or discussion from the public about item number 8? No? Okay. Okay. All right. Moving on then to the motion that was made by Commissioner Shad and seconded by Commissioner Ashbrook, I believe? Or was it? No?
Mr.
Commissioner
Ashford,
Barnes.
I think so.
But
Well, he asked, I know what's going on.
yeah,
I
no,
just-
but I'm talking about, I think his is a
It's on
different
another item, but I wanted to make sure.
In the consent, though.
Pardon me?
In the consent, I think, maybe.
I'm not understanding what you're saying.
I don't know if there's any more discussion from the public as it relates to the other items in the consent agenda.
I hadn't gotten to that yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I thought you were calling the roll. I'm
No,
sorry.
no. Are there any other discussion on item number 8? That's what we had just asked, and there's none on that. So at this time, from the board, are there any other questions on the items 7 through 14? From the public, are there any questions on items 7 through 14? Any of those items? Mr. DeFell, please approach the podium.
Excuse me, Virgil DeFell, 1009 Colorado Avenue, Lynn Haven, Florida. Mayor and Commissioners and everyone, item 12, termination agreement for roadside assistance funding. Would someone please enlighten me as how much does that cost us? Do we service tourists? Do we service simply residents of Lynn Haven? I'd like to know a little bit more about, most of us probably have insurance to assist with roadside, but I'm curious what that's about in our budget.
Mr. Schubert, would you like to address that?
Sure. This is roadside assistance funding, not for vehicles, but it's a DOT grant where they offered us $200,000 to improve the medians in the middle of 77, and we investigated putting trees in there like you'll see towards the south of the city limits. Unfortunately, when we were investigating that, the DOT also requires us to have curbing around all of those medians. So while we wanted to put trees out there and we initially accepted the $200,000, it's cost prohibitive. It's as much or close to double to do the curbing so that we can put the trees in. So we didn't want to spend $400,000 to spend $200,000 on trees.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Perfect. Are there other questions on any of these items, Mr. Walker?
Item 14. We've been trying for years to cover a little discrepancy, and I call it discrimination against the Old Town area. The Old Town area, which we're standing in, sitting in, and resting in, is the only one that does not have reuse water. Reuse water, when it was first envisioned, was free for a long time. I think about 2 years ago you changed it and you charge the users $5 a month for reuse water. And also the reuse water was put in for developments, new developments, in lieu of the Old Town area. We don't have it down here. Down here on 14 it says a grant agreement with DEP for reuse improvements. Is any of those improvements that you're getting a grant for going to help senior citizens in this area on fixed incomes that have to water their lawn and pay an exorbitant fee with the city's water? Is any of those improvements going to be included for this area in that grant?
My understanding is that it is. Is that a misunderstanding?
We're still working with the engineer right now to identify the best way to spend this engineering money. But I mean, to speak to the new developments, that's in our code. We require the new developments to put it in at their cost.
I apologize. I was thinking of water system improvements when I said my understanding is that it is. Okay, I
Yeah,
apologize.
I'm looking for,
Sorry.
will those improvements be dealing with this area?
Well, the city engineer's here. I mean, he can speak to that, but I do not think it's a comprehensive plan. I mean, the construction cost is what's prohibitive, not the engineering. But certainly we can look at the old sections of town as well. Certainly, you have a lot more infrastructure there to go around. There's a lot more engineering involved, and there's a lot more cost involved because you're putting pipes down where there's already a complication of 100 years of other pipes. But certainly, it is not purposeful discrimination. It might be cost prohibitive, but certainly that's, if it's up to us, we'll put it everywhere.
Well, the reason I say this is because we've been told different things along the line over these years. First of all, we were told it would be cost prohibitive for the pumps and the lines. Well, we were replacing the pipes down here, digging holes, putting new pipes down. At that time, it was suggested, why don't you lay down the reused water pipes, put them dry so that you're ready for it, so you don't have to dig the holes again. Second of all, it was told us that you have to put pumps in here. The reused water comes from here, is piped up to the park, and then piped down here again. I don't understand the logic behind it. That's why I'm asking the question. Are we considering the neglected, better choice of words, old town, senior citizens that formed this town, that are on fixed incomes, that have to water their lawns with the exorbitant price of the city water? When you're getting a grant, that might help them out. That was my question.
Would the city engineer like to speak to that? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
While he's coming up, Mr. Walker, I think this is a good opportunity to remind folks if they are using city water for irrigation, they need to let City Hall know because we can provide a discount because obviously that water is not going to be treated. We can put a separate meter out there. So
I understand.
I appreciate you bringing that up.
Good evening. I'm Chris Forehand with Panhandle Engineering. The scope of the work includes a hydraulic model of the reuse system. It also includes the design of a new pump station because what we have now is we have a demand for reuse in a lot of these developments. We don't have the tanks and the pumps to be able to send it there. So that's one of the things we're doing. The other challenge with putting new pipes in some of the older parts of the neighborhoods is you don't have a revenue stream to be able to pay for those pipes. So we have to use grant money whenever we can to pay for those. But that is something we're going to look into with the scope. Is start talking to DEP and the Water Management District and see if we can get some money to put some of those pipes into some of the old areas.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to mention this. I mean, I live in an area of Lynn Haven that has 300 homes and doesn't have reuse. It was never designed to have reuse. It's never been discussed about bringing it in there. And the cost, I can't think of how many millions of dollars it would be to do that. But there are other places in Lynn Haven that don't enjoy reuse, and just, it's a fact of life.
Other comments or questions? Okay, we've had a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Are there any other questions from anyone on any of the items before we take a vote? Okay, thank you. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes. That was not my Clarabelle for Clinton.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And so the motion is approved. We have now voted on the consent agenda, and you'll have to remind me again, Mr. City Attorney, do we need a motion for the staff to prepare a change in the code for item number, like items similar to item number 8 for next time, or shall we just?
If the commission wants to delegate the authority to the staff right now so that this doesn't come back before the commission again, then you'll need a motion. If you just want the staff to prepare an ordinance change, then a motion would be required.
Okay, also move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to empower the staff to prepare a code change, or just to
come back with a change to the code
Thank you.
for minor subdivisions, and for clarification, does that also include delegating the authority to the city manager and the city planner to approve minor subdivisions?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I needed some help with the wording. Okay, at this time, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. Moving on to new business. Item number 15 is to set the proposed millage rate for purposes of submission of certificate of taxable value to the property appraiser's office pursuant to the TRIM Act. Is there a report or any discussion before, well, I guess I need to ask for a motion for setting the millage rate first. You're just making a motion that we'll set it at some point? Or should we, let's have a discussion of what it will be first. I'll be clear.
Sure. In our budget
Pardon me.
meeting yesterday, the budget as presented by myself and staff suggested it was prepared with a 3.9 millage rate. That is unchanged from the last 2 years, and that is our recommendation. There will be 2 budget hearing meetings that follow. They're going to be at 6 o'clock, I believe on the 12th and 19th, unless the county or some other entity causes us to change that date. But 3.9 is our recommendation.
Okay, so is there a motion to accept leaving the millage rate as it is at 3.9?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion from the board? Any questions or discussion from the public? There appears to be none. So, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ashbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Shad,
Aye.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so the millage rate will remain the same at 3.9. At this time, I just wanted a reminder about the mayor's report that I was talking about earlier about maybe directing staff to have a law enforcement appreciation day. Is anybody amenable to suggesting that as a motion?
I have no problem making a motion to that effect. I guess the motion would be to direct staff to, as I guess quickly as possible, September 11th is not a long ways off, to come up with some recommendation to us as quickly as they can, I guess, at the next meeting, as to how we might facilitate honoring the first responders in some way on the date of 9/11, and with recommendations or suggestions as to what to do, where to do it, how to publicize it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second to direct staff to come up with ideas of how we could appropriately recognize our first responders on September 11th, if that is indeed possible to do it that quickly, and maybe if not, maybe a secondary recommendation or something. So
We've already discussed it, and we're certainly on board, and we'll bring back our recommendation. And I don't mean to jump the vote.
nope, perfect. That sounds great. So could you please call the roll for a vote then?
Commissioner Ashbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Shad,
Aye.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so that has passed, and we will look forward to that day and publicizing it so that the entire city can be involved. Thank you. Moving on to item number 16 is Resolution 2016-07-653, revising stormwater fees. Is there a staff report for this resolution?
Yes, we briefly discussed this yesterday in the budget workshop, but we had a study done several years ago, and that study, obviously we're not in the business of making money. We need to recoup the money it costs to provide services, and along those lines, they set the rates. In the interim, in between studies, they have recommendations on increases, and their individual recommendations, they're based on the utility CPI or another number, again, based on their research and on our cost. So for each one of our utilities, there's 4 resolutions that follow.
We'll need to read each one. So
Yes.
we'll read them one at a, we'll go with this one first.
Right, and these recommendations as far as the increase were in the budget that we proposed yesterday, and they're per the study that was done, I think, 11 years ago, approximately. And would you like me to read the first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Resolution number 2016-07-653, a resolution of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, revising the city's established stormwater utility fees, amending Appendix A of the Lynn Haven Code of Ordinances to include such revised fees, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance of this resolution?
Also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion of this resolution? Are there any questions or discussion from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Janet Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I was here at the budget workshop yesterday, and I failed to ask or did not hear whether all of the increases for the stormwater, the solid waste, the water fees, and the wastewater, were the increases shown as the revenue in the budget for the new fiscal year?
Yes.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Are there other questions, concerns? Okay, at this time, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
No. And the resolution has passed. Item number 17 is Resolution 2016-07-654, revising the solid waste fees.
A resolution amending the rate structure for residential and commercial solid waste collection and providing an effective date.
Is there a motion that we accept this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there questions from the board regarding this?
I just would like to comment from our meeting yesterday for general consumption for the public. This coming fiscal year, 16-17, looks like we're having a pretty accelerated replacement of some of our equipment. So I think, understandably, we've got to have some money to do that with new equipment. So it is in the budget, and if somebody wants to get into the weeds and look in the minutia there, that where some of this money is going to be going, it's going to be spent on a number of upgrades to equipment that is lacking.
And since I was the no vote on the other, I feel the need to comment. I'm not trying to be objectionable, but there were parts of the budget in the workshop yesterday that I was not in agreement with because of the discussions that I've had with city manager about some of the things that I disagree with or think that we could do in a different way. And one of the things we discussed yesterday, this is an election year. There are going to be changes probably in one way or the other, no matter who becomes the new leader of the country. I just think it's a shaky time, and these fees, just because Lynn Haven is the lowest right now in the county, is not any indication that we need, to move higher. I also, looking at the comparison between the cities, while Bay County is the highest at over $100 each month with utilities, that does skew the average a bit, and there has been quite a bit of controversy over the cost to Bay County residents due to, if you've been following the commission meetings, the sewer plant and all that. So not trying to be disagreeable, but I just have a difference of opinion, and I'll leave it at that. So is there any other discussion about revising the solid waste fees from the board? Any from the public? Yes, sir.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Normally, we do not gang up on all four of them at once, but Mr. Schubert opened the floodgates and mentioned all four. Years ago, it was decided that this would be raised with the CPI, and it would go no higher than the CPI, whichever was less. I do not see any figures attached to the revising of the fees. Yesterday's meeting, there was one that was mentioned, 4 point some odd percent. It's interesting. We hire somebody to tell us what's going on in Miami should go on in here. We pay $25,000, $30,000 for Burton to tell us what to do. What I look at it is we pay them to let you get off the hook, they say, so you blame them. I don't think that's right. Let's take a look at this. Years ago, it was discovered by the citizens that we were transferring funds from the enterprise funds. Enterprise funds are a business. You can bond those. You can't bond ad valorem tax-based services. Enterprise funds, which there are 4 of, are businesses, and you can bond them. They make money. They make a profit. Years ago, we found that they were transferring funds from the water fund to the general fund, from the sewer fund to the general fund, and from the rest of them to the general fund. And that was incorrect because, and Mr. Schubert discovered it, and he stopped that. Very well, he did. But the citizens discovered it a long time ago, and they were rebuked for finding it. That's good. Enterprise funds makes money, puts the money into the enterprise funds. For example, you're going to raise the water fee. You're going to raise the solid waste fee. No numbers were given how much you're going to do it. Let's take a look at the water fund. The water fund makes money. In fact, it's transferring next year $369,000 to another fund in the enterprise. That means it's profitable, it's taking care of itself, and it's taking care of itself so well that it can take care of another identity. Look at solid waste, sanitation fund. It's transferring $646,000 to another fund, enterprise. It takes care of itself well enough to make money to take care of another identity, which you are going to raise the rates.
Mr. Walker, if you can bring it to a wrap-up as soon as possible.
That's over $1 million that the enterprise funds are making. But then you're transferring that and you're raising the rates. We know the enterprise funds make money. But it looks funny that we're transferring from these funds to another fund and supporting the original and also increasing the rate to the citizens of this town. And it doesn't seem necessary. And it's all based on the fact that Mr. Burton, who we pay for, and we get what we pay for, we asked them, and they're telling us, because in Miami, they're allowed to do this. You're going to raise your rates. Doesn't make sense.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on item number 16, revising the solid waste fees?
Mayor, if I could just
Sure, go
comment
ahead.
briefly.
Go ahead.
You know, while the salary study is based on other cities, not in Miami, the burden study, when they look at these fees, and I wasn't here 11 years ago, but it takes a hard look at the capital improvement projects and also the cost of just, you know, electricity, chemicals, et cetera. What does it cost to run these? What are your future capital improvement projects? And that's where these rates are derived from. Not necessarily, while it's helpful, I think, to put together a chart like we did yesterday to show how our rates compare to other cities, it may not always be comparable because other cities don't provide their own water. The county does, but the other cities don't. But anyway, I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. But one of the cities you compared us with does provide their own water, right? Crestview?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's why I did include them
Yes.
in the study.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other question or comment from the audience? Okay, at this time, Mr. Schubert, if you would call the roll on item number 17, the resolution for revising solid waste fees.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
No. Resolution 2016-07-654 is approved. Moving on to item number 18, Resolution 2016-07655, revising the water fees. Mr. Schubert, if you would please read that resolution.
A resolution amending rates and charges for residential and commercial wastewater, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance?
Move approval.
Is there a motion for a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or comments from the board? Any discussion, questions, or comments from the public? And there appears to be none. Mr. Schubert, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
No. And the resolution has passed. Moving on to item number 19, which is Resolution 2016-07656, revising wastewater fees.
A resolution amending rates and charges for residential and commercial wastewater system, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Is there a motion, a second, I'm sorry. Is there a second? Thank you. Are there questions or discussion from the board? Are there questions or discussion from the public? Mr. DeFell?
Virgil DeFell, 1009 Colorado. Mayor, I'm observing that you have been the one negative or no vote. And you don't have to explain, but being a fan of yours, I would be most interested in knowing, you know, and I don't know how you're going to vote on this one, but why are you voting no when it's a 4-to-1 vote?
I don't mind sharing that view. I was hoping not to, just for the sake of dissension, because I've made these comments before in previous meetings. In fact, I think I made them last year. I am a fairly new mayor, and I don't say that every decision that I make is the right one, and the vote I'm making today may not be the right one. It's what I feel is the right thing. I did a lot of thought about it. The reason is similar to some of the comments Mr. Walker made, not all of them. I feel that for many years that money was not handled in the way it should have been from these other accounts. They were transferred into general fund. I don't want to open, hard feelings from anyone, because there's great disagreement on some of this between me and the city manager, and probably some of the rest of the board, obviously. And I respect everyone's opinion. But I still think that we have a large number of salary discrepancies in the city. We have less than 20 people who are making well over $1 million. Actually, it's 10. And then at the bottom of our pay scale, we have a lot of people who aren't making a livable wage. And I would like to see that rectified, and I've brought that up many times. We cannot afford to pay 10 people $1.2 million in the city of Lynn Haven. We have senior citizens who are on a very fixed income. We have a lot of new families here. If you look at the number of cutoffs every month for people who can't pay their water bills, the phone calls that I get now, I don't believe that we need to decide what Lynn Haven citizens pay based on what other cities do or do not. While doing a real estate study on the cost of a property might give you a net value for a neighborhood, it doesn't always mean that every house on that, you don't always have to go by what somebody else is doing. So for anyone that I offend by my vote, I do apologize, but I do have deeply held convictions based on what I said and promised that I would do, and so that's where I'm at. So
thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? At this time, if we could have the vote on Resolution 2016-07656, revising the wastewater fees.
Was that Commissioner Barnes? Did you make them? Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
No. And the resolution has passed. And that brings us to item number 20, which is the public commentary. At this time, anyone in the audience may speak on any topic. I do remind you that there is a 3-minute request that you remain within that time limit. If you have a prepared statement or if you're speaking to the point, I'm certainly not going to cut anyone off, but if you would just be respectful of time of everyone here. Thank you. Who would like to? Ms. Donnell? If I can get up, take your time. Okay. Your time doesn't count for walking up, so take your time.
Thanks for clarifying that.
I've already fallen once this week.
Bless your heart.
Libby Tennell, 505 Virginia Avenue. My husband and I retired back here in '71. And back then, the senior citizen got a discount on their garbage. But now, everything has gone up. I don't see how a lot of these poor people, I make enough I can pay my bills, but a lot of them can't do it. And I think it's terrible raising all these fees that y'all are raising. And I think when time to elect new commissioners, people will remember that. And I applaud the mayor for standing up for us.
Anyone else have a comment or a question? Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Excuse me, Virgil DeFell, 1009 Colorado Avenue. I want to express my most, well, I can't say humble, I'm not very humble most times, but appreciation. I drove by the new location of our McMillan Library today. And I saw it in the Lynn Haven Ledger and the News Herald and all of that, but what an outstanding example of what can happen in a positive way when administration, Heritage Society, everybody works together to get that done, and all of our employees are involved in all that. So that's number one. Number two, I also drove by the 17th Street ditch, see all that progress going on, and it just reminds me, most of us here would know when I talk about Doc's Tires. Mr. Julius Smith, who died back in, I think it was April the 20th. Now, I have spoken with his family about what I'm about to say, and they don't know that I'm going to say it now, but I think if we followed the city of Lynn Haven, Mr. Julius Smith, known to most of us as Doc's Tires, it would be appropriate to that 17th Street that goes right by their business to change the name, or even have somehow to make it known as Doc's Drive. Thank you.
I think that's a fabulous suggestion, and I'm sure that the rest of the commission, I'm sure, agree, and probably someone can bring that to a motion at some point, maybe the next meeting. The staff look into that. I think that's wonderful, Mr. DeFell. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Marie Waller Lee, and I've lived in Lynn Haven since January 1959. When we purchased our house on Iowa Avenue and on Davis Lake was a beautiful, beautiful, pristine lake filled with fish. It had been stocked. We could sit on the bank and fish, catch brim, bass, and children were kayaking, rowing the boats, swimming. It was a beautiful, beautiful lake. Today, it is in very, very poor condition. I assume it was the city who has sprayed it within the past year, and that did help some. But something really needs to be done because it is a very, very crud comes up. When we get a good hard rain, then it clears it out. But people going from 77 over to the country club pass over the spillway, Anderson Bayou on one side and Davis Lake on the other. I just read yesterday in the Ledger where y'all were having a meeting regarding the budget, and I was hoping that and praying that y'all would find money within the budget to clean up Davis Lake. Please.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee. Would anyone from possibly, I was speaking to the attorney, Mrs. Lee, our city, Mr. Jackson, and I want to let him make a couple of comments, if you don't mind, about the lake and how we can move forward with that.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if you were, it sounds like you were around a couple years ago when we had the discussions with Florida Fish and Wildlife about who owned the lake and how to get that cleaned up, and there was memorandum of understanding at that point, working on trying to get the lake cleaned up. The city is responsible for the causeway, but the lake is actually, my recollection is owned by the state of Florida, an FWC. So I think they're the ones that may have sprayed. I don't know, but that's something that I'm glad to work with the city manager and talk with the mayor about trying to get that fixed.
The lady who ran for mayor some time ago, the last lady before Margaret, who ran for mayor, went down to the courthouse and actually found the deed that the city owned the lake.
Right, we looked at that pretty extensively, and there are some lots that own all the way to the lake bottom, and there are some that just own to the lakefront. But the issue from the legal standpoint is whether that was navigable water back when the state was created. And after a long discussion with FWC in the state of Florida, and I'll go back and check to make sure, but
Please do, because it is such a beautiful lake and such an asset for Lynn Haven to have a pristine lake right there in town.
And so if Mr. Jackson can do that research for us, and then possibly at the end of that research, the city staff, or could, Mr. Baker, whoever on the staff would be the contact, maybe if the state or FWC is indeed the ones who need to be doing some work, maybe we can find a solution, but at least begin the research or go back and look at the research that's been done.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that satisfactory, Mrs. Lee? Thank you. Mr. Walker?
The lady you're talking about was Rindy.
Mr. Walker, I apologize, but to follow decorum, you'll have to come to the podium and address the committee. You instead of speaking directly to a citizen.
Follow rules, follow rules. The lady you were talking about, I'm not allowed to turn back. Lady I'm talking about was Rindy. She ran for office. If you would like, I have her papers for the whole thing that went on that time. Be glad to turn it over to anybody. She left them with me because she figured this would come up again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walker, for having that information. Is there anyone else that has, yes, Mr.
Lynn.
Miller? Sorry, I didn't see you.
Leon Miller, 1508 Mississippi Avenue. I had two things here. Number one is that Mr. Virgil Hill mentioned the 17th Street turning into Doc's Drive. We got to remember, Doc was a good man, but there was other pioneers before Doc. We just don't want to do nothing hasty and hurt those feelings. The Marsh Greens. So think about that and everything. The other one is that my wife, the AKA sorority, have been using the recreation complex for a drive to do for abused women's. And they met with the city manager and the recreation director a couple of times. And I guess at the last minute, they told her that she would have to have insurance. They got national insurance. But then she was told that the city of Lynn Haven have to be placed on the insurance. When did all of this come forth? If you're going to do that, I think it needs to be publicized on that paper that you give them when they go to rent the facilities.
Would someone from staff like to speak to that? Mr. Schubert, would you?
Mrs. Stout Tate isn't here. She's ill. But if it's not on there, we can certainly put it on there. That is an error that the city recognized about a year and a half ago, that we have to be named as an additional insured. It's been vetted through our agent. It's unfortunate that we have to require that, but certainly we can clarify those papers if it's not already on there.
But do all organizations that, flag football, baseball, that use the facility City Park, do they have to put the city on the insurance?
I tell you what, I think the best thing to do is to have a policy, and we can do that. Because I've had some of the same questions, to be perfectly frank, about when does a family reunion in Porter Park constitute an event versus a fun run, etc.? And I'm not sure I've gotten the answer. Now, I mean, I think yours does, but I'm not sure where that line is, so perhaps with a review from legal, we can actually have a policy on that.
Okay, thank
How's
you.
that?
Is there another question? Okay, Mr. DeFell.
Partly, Mr. Miller, and I'm Virgil DeFell, for years, we had our National Alliance for Mental Illness walk here, and the second Saturday, and starting at Sheffield Park and blah, blah, blah. And we have never been required to provide liability insurance. But last year we did. We were able to find a company that only charged us about $240, but that was one day's event. And it's all about liability. To me, it's so sad that and we need attorneys, but we don't need everyone who has a thought about suing. I've been involved in that over the years as an administrator of schools and so forth. So now we're moving to the city of Panama City, and we have the same issue there about insurance. It's all about, it's so easy for someone to sue, a frivolous suit, basically, as a lot of them are. And so that's why we are faced with this for an event having to have insurance to indemnify the city of Lynn Haven or the city of Panama City or whatever it might be. Thank you.
Thank you, and hopefully we can come up with a policy that won't be cost prohibitive and that will be satisfactory to everyone. Yes. In full disclosure, this is a relative of the mayor's. Mother, would you please state your name and address?
Gary Deal, 511 Tennessee Avenue. And I hesitate to say anything to anybody because she is the mayor and my daughter. But I want to know why every time that the city needs money that it's always got to come out of the water and the sewer bills. We have houses almost on every street being built, and you're going to collect taxes from every one of those houses. What are you going to do with that money? No answer. But anyway, we go back to the time when we couldn't even build a house in Lynn Haven. That was in 1985. We couldn't get a permit to build a house because we didn't have a sewer. And I just think it's a travesty that every time there's money needed for this city, it has to come out of the water and the sewer bills. Thank God I can pay my water bill, but there's a lot of people that can't. And I'd like for you guys to think about that. You don't just always have to take the money out of the water and sewer. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
George Hines, 1603 Rhode Island Avenue in Avon, Florida. Elections. People get elected to represent the people of an area. These people in here are represented by you. You're supposed to be voting to their wishes, not against them. I used to come to the meetings about 5, 6 years ago, and there was a person on the board that always talked down to the residents and everything because he wasn't elected. 4 of you are elected, and you're supposed to be voting for the citizens. But recently, most things go on about money. You go into the direction of money instead of the direction of the citizens. So if you mind or the voting of the citizens, if you're talking to the people that you're representing, you should know how they feel. Apparently, somebody's not talking to somebody. Because if everybody vote yes and the mayor vote no, somebody's mixed up in their thought pattern. For the betterment of the city, we need to come together and get on one thought. Just because the city make money don't mean the city has to spend money. You can never keep money if you're always spending what you're making. It's another way to make money besides taking it from the citizens. That's my last word. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Or?
Mayor, could I just comment on one thing?
Sure.
And I don't want to turn this into I'm certainly not trying to be abrasive or anything, but I do want to comment on the enterprise fund, on why we take it from the water and the sanitation, as somebody else also stated. And simply put, I'd like to make a couple points. One, there's not a penny going from the enterprise to the general fund since I've been here, okay? So there's not a penny. Now, so let's focus on that enterprise fund. The reason why water and sanitation are used is because the stormwater and the sewer don't make money. You know, and making money is a misnomer, because we're not in the business to make money. We're in the business to recoup what it costs to provide these services and also set aside some reserves for future capital improvement projects. Our 17th Street ditch needed to be piped years ago. That 17th Street ditch isn't being piped on the revenue collected for that stormwater fee that just went up, that's only pennies. That 17th Street ditch is being piped based on the water and the sanitation. There's no other way to pay for that. The same thing with other projects, and we spoke about it yesterday. For those folks that aren't here, there's a 5 and 10-year capital improvement plan which prioritize and list all of the infrastructure projects of the city. We've got to pay for those. We've kept debt ratio pretty much constant over the last 3 years. But within those 4 major funds and that enterprise funds, you will see some shifting, because one year you might have a $4 million stormwater project that's going to be atypical, that's going to be a once-in-a-50-year lifetime of a city. You're not going to ever collect stormwater fees, and no matter who you hire, you're not going to collect stormwater fees that will compensate that. So you will see those funds transfer. That's not unique to this city. But I just wanted to comment on the enterprise funds. While you see those surpluses being intermingled in that enterprise fund, but again, they are not intermingled in the general.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? There appear to be none, and so this, thank you for attending, and this meeting is adjourned.